The economy is broken, so is your marriage. Is this really a good time to split up?
This is the American Law Journal.
Tonight, divorce. Breaking up is always hard to do. Is that especially true in a bad economy? Good evening. I'm Christopher Naughton. 3 top-flight family law attorneys join me on the program tonight, and they impart their advice on divorce in a tough economy. Bonnie Frost joins us from Einhorn Harris, Asher, Barbarito, and Frost. Over 25 years in practice for Ms. Frost. Don Spry is with us tonight with King, Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall. Don in practice now for over 30 years. Their firm with a Eastern Pennsylvania and a Western Pennsylvania presence. And David LeDove, hailing from Cozen O'Connor, a top 100 law firm. All 3 of my attorneys have served their respective bar associations at the very highest levels, and they have also taken cases to their respective state Supreme Court. So if you're considering divorce, listen up, you'll learn a lot tonight. First off, we want to let you know we are here every Monday night on WFMZ TV following Talk with Your Doctor at 7 p.m. We're on other systems as well, so go to our website, lawjournaltv.com, where every program that we tape here later goes up to the website as a webcast. If you need advice in about 3 dozen different areas of practice, you can find your information there. We've also got a Facebook page, so go into Facebook and search the American Law Journal. Call us toll-free, 888-78-LAW-TV. Write to us at info@lawjournaltv.com and get your law on demand. There's a very good quote from a recent MarketWatch survey that says that the recession and economic turmoil is creating a new class of casualties, married couples who can't afford to get divorced. In these tough times, many people are finding it's cheaper to stay together even when they can't stand each other. Your personal experience is that. Bonnie Frost, is that true?
We have seen somewhat of a decline, but in general, our business in our firm particularly is still good. However, our state has just released figures yesterday that statewide divorce filings are down 9% from last year, which is about 4,000 or 4,500 filings, less filings this year than last year. So we may be very fortunate in our law firm, but it is a fact of life in the state of New Jersey.
Is that an accurate assessment, Dave? We're seeing more War of the Roses scenarios, people staying together. They don't like each other, they need to get divorced, but they're still together.
Yeah, and we've come up with a couple conclusions. One is the real estate market. When real estate doesn't sell, where can the parties go? In other words, in the olden days, you'd put the house up for sale, you'd sell the house, they split the proceeds of the house in some fashion, and then they both could get new houses. When real estate doesn't sell, then the question is who's going to leave and who's going to stay? And if you remember the premises, these are people who dislike each other intensely. So the last thing they're going to do is say, oh, no problem, honey, I'll leave and you can stay. It's just not happening. So the real estate market really created a cramp in the sense of people being able to proceed and move through divorces. And they in our practice, and a number of my colleagues, we slowed down between September and April.
And Don, has that been your experience as well, that people still want to get divorced? Maybe they're coming in and talking to you, but they're not pulling the trigger.
I think generally that's true. We get consults. People want to know what their rights are, but then I'm finding now, I think as Dave mentioned, that some of the people that came into consults months ago are finally deciding to go ahead, and I can only attribute that to the fact that they must feel more comfortable with their individual circumstance.
That could be one of the factors.
Yeah. The exception to the rule, I think, is that we did find, or are finding, that people that have their own businesses now, if they've got the ability to do it, is a good time to go ahead because the value of the business is down as they're buying their spouse out. Mm-hmm. It's like anything else, it's a good time to purchase.
Right, exactly. Well, you know, this statement is as practical as it is chilling, and that is that divorce planning is a fact of life, and that if people are considering divorce, they're going to have to plan for it. Even if they're not getting divorced, they still need to plan for it, and timing is everything.
Well, what I think, the other thing that I'm seeing more of now is more people are thinking about prenups even. So when you talk about planning, they're talking about planning before they even enter their relationships and saying, I want to have some type of prenup, or if nothing else, I want to have some type of agreement that's going to give some structure to my relationship if it falls apart. And so I'm seeing more of that than I had maybe 10 or 15 years ago, and that's sort of an interesting side to all of this that's happening.
So Don, if people are indeed waiting, they come in to see you, they've got the consult, as you say, and now it's not 2 months or 3 months or 6 months later, maybe they're waiting as much as a year out. That must mean that in that time period, they're not twiddling their thumbs. What do you as an attorney tell them? Look, if you're going to go down this road, and it seems like you're going to, you're waiting for the right time, how do they plan for it in this economy?
Well, I mean, it depends on the person. If it's a dependent spouse who may end up with the children, I tell them they've got to make sure that they can set some money aside. When the separation occurs, it may take them some time to get money from by a support order because of the delays. I think the primary thing that they need to do is try as best they can to set aside some money to have some sort of independence, because Dave's right. With the house is no longer an asset; it's essentially a burden. And prior to this recession, or depression, whatever anybody wants to call it, I always thought that it was a difficult thing for a dependent spouse to take a house anyway, because many times they couldn't afford it. After all, it took 2 incomes to support the house, and now the split occurs, and there's going to be less than 2 incomes, even when support's included. But at least when that occurred prior to these economic problems, you could then sell the house and you'd probably come out okay because you might have even made a profit. Now, if you take the house, you're not going to be able to sell it in most instances and make a profit.
Right. So being awarded the house is quite a misnomer these days.
Yeah, I don't think it's an award anymore. I think
being awarded an anchor.
It's almost a Gordian knot.
Yes, right.
Well, I think one of the other issues, I think you find many more dependent spouses who, more often than not, are the women and the wives in the marriages. They're the ones who are very tied emotionally to the house, and they're going to say, I can't leave this house, I need this house, I want this house. And that just may not be the right thing at all, but there seems to be this gender issue for many women that's the last thing they want to give up.
You talked about planning, and there's estate planning, there's tax planning, and why shouldn't there be divorce planning? I would like to try to spin it more positively, that it's a really important fact in someone's life, so plan. When you said, what do you tell people to do? Don was kind of telling you in terms of some of the women, get some money aside. I've seen women, I'll call the nesting concept, where they charge up those charge cards to get every imaginable thing they're going to need for the next year. They'll stockpile the laundry detergent, anything that is staple that will stay. It sounds cruel. I'm not trying to be cruel. The reality is they're afraid.
Yeah, but that would be bad advice, though.
Well, it's not bad advice if you're representing the woman.
No, but if they're charging it?
She's not going to get hit with the majority of the debt. The husband's going to get hit with the majority of the debt, possibly. Again, it's a case-by-case thing.
Right.
But they're not thinking about next year. They're thinking about, how am I going to live for the next 6 months to 12 months? If you're on the guy's perspective, you're right. I tell them, get rid of the debt. Try to, stop charging, cut up the charge cards. Cut down on the discretionary spending. Make the trips not as fancy this next year or so, because when
Let's hope they're not going on a trip if they're really considering divorce. It's still, I know it happens. It happens.
Well, they now go on separate trips.
Okay.
Or they go on trips as a family because we want to stay together for our children. We want to make sure that our children's lives aren't changed, so we're doing this for them.
Yeah.
I've seen that happen.
Oh yeah.
Even when they don't like each other, they'll do that.
And they always got 2 rooms. Now it's like one kid and one parent in one room, and one kid and one parent in the other room, instead of the kids and the parents. It's just the reality.
You were saying sometime before the program that in the 30-plus years you've been in practice, I didn't realize it was even that long, but that you'd never seen this kind of a bad housing market. We've never really seen an upside-down housing market. I mean, '89 was bad, and there's some other bad years here, but now I think it's 1/3 of homes in America. You owe more on your house than your house is actually worth. So now, as you numbers crunch with your forensic accountants.
You don't have to be forensic anymore.
Just have to have your math.
Just have a math. I mean, you figure out here,
Well said.
just you take the sale price of the house minus the cost of sale, minus mortgage one, minus line of credit or equity line, and you're negative. And it really is a whole new conundrum that we now have that we never had before. There always was equity. It may not be great or a lot, but there was always equity. Now we have negative equity, and now we are going to have to learn something from some of our brethren and sisters who are in the debtor-creditor relationships as to how to go to the banks and beg for short sales or whatever else, go back to the sales people on the real estate and say, instead of 6%, can you take a 5% commission? Yes. Everyone now has to work harder than they did before because the equity's not there.
Well, the asset landscape is changing, and just a quick punch list. The house, oh my God, the house, again, generally it's the most valued asset in a marriage, but in today's housing market, once again, awarding the home is an absolute conundrum. 401k stocks and mutual funds, again, conventional wisdom would say that they'll rebound. This is of little comfort, of course, to couples who want a divorce now and not after the economy recovers. And then, of course, layoffs and unemployment. Wages are no longer predictable, Don Spry. How do layoffs now factor into divorce planning?
Well, I mean, I think if you're representing the prospective payor, the person that's going to be paying alimony or support, if you're going to enter into any kind of an agreement for alimony, you're going to advise that it should be a modifiable agreement so that it's not going to be the same amount no matter what for 5 years to cover a circumstance where someone might lose their job. The support, you might be looking at situations where you'd be averaging income for several years. It's all circumstances that, while it existed in the past, it wasn't as prevalent. So while I think we've all dealt with these issues, I think most of us now, when we're dealing with alimony, are thinking in terms of modifiable alimony, and that's because we don't know where our clients are going to be a year from now, 6 months from now.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up Don's discussion in a second, in that I have a case right now that just came back to me. We entered into an agreement 2 years ago, and the gentleman is related into the construction area. And outside, my practice is primarily suburban Philadelphia. And 2 years ago, the housing market was booming. And this gentleman, who is an electrical supply manufacturer or representative, his business was great. 2 years later, he's 30% down, 40% down. Now, child support is always modifiable, but alimony can be either modifiable or non-modifiable. You make that call. And Don was alluding to the fact that years ago, most of our, representing the dependent spouse, most of the times we always, the independent spouse, the moneymaker, we would rather make the call and having the money, the alimony locked in. We didn't want the alimony to float. Now, as Don just said, and I agree wholeheartedly, you're crazy not to have the alimony floating up or down.
Is it the money, or is it the peace of mind that you're looking for when you plan for a divorce? We're going to address that when we return. You're watching the American Law Journal. Back in just a moment.
The American Law Journal is made possible in part by Cozen O'Connor, a full-service client-oriented law firm among the 100 largest in the United States. Einhorn, Harris, Asher, Barbarito, Frost, one of the largest family law practices in the state of New Jersey. King, Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall, a comprehensive practice serving its clients in family law, business, personal injury, and school law matters for over 30 years. Scheller PC, winning large verdicts for people injured by dangerous medicine, including antidepressants and antipsychotics, as well as medical malpractice and products liability claims. Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Florida. Scheller, preserving the rights of the injured for over 30 years. And the Legal Intelligencer, the nation's oldest legal newspaper for lawyers.
We're back here on the American Law Journal and here every Monday night on WFMZ TV. at 7 o'clock, right after Talk with Your Doctor. It's very interesting sometimes when we do topics on pharmaceutical liability and medical malpractice right after a medical show. But tonight, we're discussing the kinder, gentler aspect of getting divorced in tough economic times. Three very experienced family law practitioners join me here this evening. Bonnie Frost with New Jersey's Einhorn Harris, Asher Barbarito and Frost, probably now the largest family law practice in all of New Jersey. Don Spry has been joining us since 1990. We celebrate 20 years together, Don, so to speak, next year with King Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall heading up their domestic relations practice, and David LaDove with Cozen O'Connor. And again, much like the other heralded stars here on the set tonight, served his Pennsylvania Bar Association well, heading up the family law section. And of course, Dave, like Bonnie and Don, has taken family law cases to the very highest courts in their respective states. You know, I can't imagine for a moment, as we discuss divorce, and I know we're talking about the hard numbers, the numbers crunching, that ultimately, is this really about the money? If people are in pain, even if they're going to lose money, isn't it just time, Bonnie Frost, to get the hell out?
I think there are more people now, I think they've always come to me and said, I just can't take it anymore. I've had it, it's over, I'm out of here. And I don't think that's changed in terms of the tough economic times. What I do think, though, people will say, I'm out of here, but maybe I don't have as much money as I did, so maybe we should go to mediation. Tell me about mediation. Is that a less expensive way for me to get through this divorce so that I can get out of here? And in New Jersey, we're forced to tell everyone in our initial consultation that they have a right to go to mediation, and we have to have them sign off a piece of paper.
Really?
Telling them that we've advised them that they can go to mediation. And so I'm hearing more people talking about mediation as an option, as a way to maybe that's a way that
Right.
they can reduce their costs.
But they're still staying in the same house together longer, Dave LaDove. I mean, is it like the old War of the Roses movie where all of a sudden, you know, there is that line going right down the middle of the living room? Not literally, but I'm saying figuratively. You're seeing people stay in the house longer.
I'm seeing that. I'm seeing that they don't have the money, either because the savings have been depleted or there's a reduction in the income in the household. So I'm seeing people stay in the house. They're going into the kids' room, or the kid who's off to college, or they're going into the basement, one of the parties. So I'm seeing a lot of people just, you say War of the Roses, I'll say it's, you know, living very uncomfortably. So when you say, isn't it time? Yes, it's time, but even if you file for the divorce, you have, depending upon what jurisdiction you're in,